Yesterday here at the festival, I asked him what he thinks of Elon Musk's X platform and social media today. By the way, he used to work with Elon Musk, ended up actually pushing him out of the company at PayPal.
My judgment is, we should have just a lot more surface area for debate, discussion, and I think what Elon did with Twitter was, I think, extremely important. And I support it as an ideological project. Okay. I worry about it as a financial thing. And I don't know if that works. The Elon question with Twitter was, are you really allowed to do this and keep the advertisers? And so that's where.
Would you make it harder?
It's super important what Elon did as a nonprofit, but it may not. It's going to be tough as a business.
What about Truth Social?
They have a few other problems they have to solve first.
Not something you'd invest in. You get your head around the $6 billion valuation.
If I wanted to secretly funnel money to the Trump campaign violation, get around the campaign limitations, so the stock price goes up and he can sell some stock and fund his campaign, that might be a reason to invest.
The Surgeon General was here in Aspen. And I think you've probably seen in the last couple weeks that he came out and genuinely believes that social media and the Facebooks of the world really have done a real disservice to young people in the country. And I just wonder what you think of that as somebody who invested early in Facebook.
There's I think, I can't say that he's 100% wrong. The place where I always push back on is that I feel it's too easy to turn tech or the social media companies into the scapegoat for all of our problems. And so, yes, there is some kind of a interesting critique one can make of the tech companies. And if you ask how many of the executives in those companies, how much screen time do they let their kids use? And there's probably sort of an interesting critique one could make.
What do you do?
Not very much. And I think that's very...
What's not very much?
An hour and a half a week.
Hour and a half a week?
Something like that.
Guys, Peter has 2 children, 3 and 5. An hour and a half a week is the number. Maybe age appropriate, but it is actually quite indicative of what's going on in the Valley. When you talk to a lot of the CEOs who run these major companies, they don't let their children get a lot of screen time. And so it's interesting to hear somebody, of course, who invested so early in this company talk about that. He also got into his decision not to invest in X or XAI, but he is now a big investor in SpaceX. In fact, his investment in SpaceX may turn out to be his best investment ever. Of course, Facebook appeared to be that earlier. I told you before that he had worked with Elon Musk at PayPal, ended up being involved in a coup to push Elon Musk out, but then actually created a relationship with him all over again, where he decided to invest in SpaceX. But again, making this sort of unique and interesting decision not to go into some of the other things. I know we've had a number of guests who are all in. Kathy Woods, has invested in anything that Elon Musk has been involved in. And then, of course, those comments about Truth Social, quite interesting. We got into a whole thing about how he's actually talked to people. I said, do you know people who are trying to funnel money that way? And from a campaign finance perspective, and I think he demurred exactly about who he had talked to, but clearly I hadn't heard anybody specifically say that out loud, at least at his level, guys.